Anything is possible. New freeze and a lot of them.
What's up, my man?
Yeah, good. How have we been keeping?
Dude, I don't think I've seen you since the Mad Happy Block Party like a year ago, last
I
summer.
was a long way from home at that party.
Yes, yes.
Beverly Hills is not where I grew up, but
Well, dude, I'm excited to hear where you grew up and learn a little bit more. But hey, number one, thanks so much for making the time.
Of course.
I've been a fan from afar, and I know we've met a few times, but love Ugly Drinks and the incredible brand you're building in multiple countries, and I'm excited to just dive in and share your story.
Of course. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Obviously inspired by your journey as well, and love following what you're up to, what you're sharing. So appreciate you having me on and chatting.
Dude, you are up there with one of the most impressive omni-channel social media marketers in the game. I mean, your LinkedIn, Instagram.
Is that a compliment?
It's
I think
beast.
you beat me though.
It's beast. All right, dude. Well, look, gonna keep it super casual. For those of you that don't know, Ugly Drinks is incredible. Would you say you're a functional seltzer or a functional water? How would you categorize yourself?
I'll grab one to show everybody. But
there you go.
Yeah, this is Ugly if anybody hasn't seen it. Flavored sparkling water. We have a variety of different products now, different flavors. We have regular flavored seltzers, a bunch of different flavors and some limited editions on our website now. We have an energy water, and we have now a plain still unsparkling with no flavor at all, but no plastic either. So it's a packaged water product with no plastic, which is kind of a big part of our business. And we donate money from the core range of seltzers to a gender equality charity called Girl Up. And then we donate money from the plain range to Oceanic Global, who help take plastic out of oceans. So Ugly is we're a water brand built around flavored sparkling waters, but we try and do a lot more than just be a drinks company.
So let's dive in, man. Like, for you, is there a reason? I mean, I definitely spent a little time just looking at your background. I know you spent time at Vita Coco and Kraft Heinz, but why water? Why flavored sparkling water? What brought you to Ugly? And the name, by the way, is incredible. But early days, where's Hugh Thomas? 10 years ago, what are you doing?
10 years ago, tomorrow actually my 21st birthday. So it's a weird decade now.
There you go.
So I definitely was not doing this then. But when I was a student, that was actually my last day of college as well. So when I was a student, that's when I first had my first beverage role, and that was I was like a college ambassador for vitamin water for I was the guy with an apartment at college full of drinks, a big sofa made out of bottled vitamin water.
And this is where in the UK? Where did you grow up?
This is a place called Warwick, is where I went to university, but I'm from the Midlands, near a place called Birmingham. Not particularly glamorous, but that's where I'm from.
It sounds fantastic. I've never
You'd
been,
love it.
But...
I mean, it's beautiful. But yeah, no, so kind of got into beverage the first time there, and was for the first time sent things like presentations from how to represent a brand, what events to get the product at, and I was like, get it to parties, get it to sports events. And I think what I just fell in love with was just the way beverage links with personality, and the way it just, when you're holding a bottle or holding a can like this, it just says so much about you. And for me, that's when I fell in love with it. And then my first job out of college was at Heinz. So I worked on Heinz ketchup as in the brand marketing team. Started
specifically on ketchup? Ketchup
yeah, on ketchup in Europe. Yeah, I was in London then. And actually on day one there, I started with a beard, and then somebody the next day left like a razor blade and a shaving cream on my desk anonymously. So I kind of never really fit into that corporate environment, but I learned a ton, learned about big brands, what it takes to build a brand like Heinz, which has been around for 150 plus years,
Can you tell us something interesting about Heinz? I mean, is it true you tap the 57? Give us a little secret.
I think that is true about tapping the 57, but the 57 was made up. I think that's a marketing mystery that they just created.
So that number is completely unknown. What?
Yeah, I believe
really?
So. 57 varieties. Yeah, I think it's totally made up. One interesting fact is that Henry Heinz, the founder, was the first person to put food and beverage in transparent packaging. So he was a disruptor in the sense that the relishes and the sauces were in glass bottles, whereas previously everything had been in cans, etc. So you could say that business has been built on, business was built on disruption and transparency. And there's also another brand, which is Heinz Beans, which I think you can find in the US, but in
And
the UK,
beans were first, weren't they?
beans were first. In the UK, it's the second highest penetration product after toilet roll. Thankfully,
Wow.
better one than the other, right? And I think,
Dude, by the way, did you see the new branding that they just rolled out with, I think it was J Knowles or JKR?
Same team that worked on Arcan, actually, which is a small world. So
beautiful. I mean, amazing
same
job.
people
for
that
both you guys
designed this, yeah. But yeah, so they've always been disruptive, and I think I learned that. But then what you learn is, like, obviously 150 years later, my job as brand manager was don't change anything, basically. Like, if you're going to change it by that much. And so that's what I learned is, like, great brands take time and, like, take real crafting. And then I was just desperate to get back into a, startup environment and, like, learn the ropes. Always knew I wanted to start a business. And Vita Coco had just launched in the UK, and I knew it was crushing over here in the US. And I joined. I was the first real marketing hire in the team in Europe. And I did everything, drive the van. I set up all the social media, demos, learned everything on the ground up. So it's very different to being, like, doing Nielsen analysis at Heinz, and the next week I was driving a van. So kind of.
So fun fact, I don't know if you know this. When I was interning in New York, I actually was interning for a company called 100 Mile Group, and one of their lead investments was Zico. So we were constantly watching Vita Coco, and we're, pretty intimidated when, we saw the growth. You guys were killing it. This is right as Zico went from our Tetra Paks to the plastic bottles, and we're having some supply chain issues, and you guys were just on a tear.
Well, I was lucky enough to come over here a few times and spend time with the team in the US, and I, just coming from the UK to this market and seeing how beverages were built. Again, that was the second time caught the bug for building a beverage company, and just the velocity. And again, like, it was like a team sport. It was the closest to feeling like part of a sports team I'd felt since I was last.
So true.
If you can make that feel like a day-to-day job, the days go real quick, and there's high fives at the end of the day and people enjoying hanging out with each other. And ultimately, that's how my co-founder and I met. We were both working there, ended up spending a lot of time hanging out outside of work, in work, because it all begins to blur because you're just enjoying yourself.
And how long were you at Vita Coco? Were you guys, was it just crazy growth trajectory?
Yeah, we joined when the business in the UK was doing less than, around less than $1 million revenue. And then when we left 3 years later, it was doing over 40, and in about
in the UK.
Oh, in Europe, yeah, we launched into about 40 markets, Middle East, Africa. We did everything. Launched in Paris, Germany, Dubai, South Africa.
Just to touch on that, how hard is that? We just launched into Canada, but to launch into that many territories with that many languages, how do you even go about it?
Definitely harder than launching across the US. There's different complexities to both, of course, and it's not necessarily easy here by any stretch of the imagination. But obviously, there's cultural nuances too, right? Like, France is different to Germany, different to Italy, different to the UK.
You call something a certain flavor in a culturally irrelevant way or offensive way, no one's gonna buy it, right? Like, so
that's it. And like, different countries have different habits, and a lot of those countries are old countries too, where people have been eating and drinking national food and drink for a long time, right? Like, France has a way of life, Italy has a way of life. So really bringing non-alc beverages to life's tough there. But then you go somewhere like Dubai, where obviously alcohol consumption is incredibly low, and soft drink consumption's high, and it's very warm outside. You get a totally different market. So very interesting experience. And so we were lucky to learn that, and then also get to spend time over here. And at that point, Joe and I just caught the bug, and we wanted to do it ourselves at that point. And I think what we became passionate while selling beverages was really understanding how bad soda was for people and how big soda is, and the way soda impacts blood sugar, insulin, certainly the way a full sugar soda gets into your bloodstream and causes a lot of type 2 diabetes and obesity is a massive issue. Think of a third of Americans, I think it's a third of Brits too, are pre-diabetic. So you're talking, 100 million plus people on their way to type 2 diabetes in the US. And the soda market is hundreds, like tens of billions.
I read it's a global $430 billion market.
That's it. And it's a global issue too.
Insane.
You have countries around the world where there are soda consumptions, like 2 units per person per day is like an average consumption of soda. And so Joe
Were
and
you
I,
were you a big consumer of soda?
no, and not since I was a kid, but I think that people crave is that like ice cold can for like less than $1 or less than £1 in the UK.
Yep.
And if you're trying to be healthy, really, in the UK at the time, it was like, well, I can get a bottle of water that's come from like the Norwegian fjords or a mountain in France or like an island in the Pacific, or I can get like a cold pressed green juice for like $10. But there was nothing that kind of bridged the gap between like health and mainstream, and that's what Joe and I became quite passionate about, is how can you create a healthy beverage that's affordable but doesn't feel like it's telling you to be something you're not. So always thinking, you know, Joe and I aren't from central London. We're not from where the trends come from. You know, how can you make something that, you know, regular people are going, oh, maybe I should stop drinking soda. Maybe I should have something that, you know, still hits the spot but doesn't have the bad stuff in it. And I don't want to break the bank. So we always worked back from being accessible and then essentially reverse engineered soda. Basically, if you take all the bad stuff out of soda, you end up with seltzer, which is obviously a big thing here, but we were the first flavored sparkling water brand in the UK. So there's no LaCroix.
Who else is local to the UK or currently, like, who are some of your comps out there?
Now there's a few good brands in the market now. Dash is a new brand.
I've seen Dash
launched over here, and they use wonky fruit and veg, so like kind of veg that wouldn't make it into a supermarket. So they've been great kind of partners in us in terms of building it in the UK. There's a couple of other bigger, I guess, CPG companies now launching brands, but nothing you'd say with the success of LaCroix in the UK yet. So we are the, I guess, market leaders, I guess, or the first to market in that sense, and in about 5,000 stores now, plus online, D2C and Amazon from day one as well. So that business is building. Yeah, so it's in good shape. But obviously, whilst we were doing that, 2 years in, we decided to launch in this market as well. But maybe, should I tell you about the naming process?
Yeah, let's talk early days, because we'll get
early
there.
Days.
Like you're tail end of Vita Coco. You and your partner, you guys are really thinking through, okay, what opportunity, you know, how are we really going to attack this opportunity and go after this? And so how exactly did you go begin execution and come up with a...
So yeah, it's a great point. So like Joe and I are like 23, 24 at this time, right? When we've had the idea, and we are working on it before and after work, and we're working on it around my like kitchen table in a small apartment in like London. We don't have any money. We don't have any experience starting a company. So we're just figuring it out. We're like going, how on earth do you do this? We probably assumed we knew more than we did at the time. We had this idea for like reverse engineering seltzer, or reverse engineering soda, basically.
And there was no seltzer at the time. There was like just no one.
Yeah, there's flavored sparkling water, but full of sugar and sweetener in the UK, right? Which I don't think is the biggest thing in the US, but basically a soda, right? There's the fine line between flavored sparkling water with sugar and soda. But we were rebellious. We wanted to do something big in our 20s. We wanted to take a risk before we had anything that stopped us doing it. And so coming up with a brand name that was rebellious, stood against the status quo, wouldn't be something that someone at a big CPG company could or would copy. Having been at a CPG company myself, I knew the level of risk. And we were starting the brand really around the time when like this country was changing president, and the UK had Brexit, and you had the whole idea of like fake news and alternative facts coming to the fore. And we felt there was a big similarity between fake news and what the generation that we were was thinking. Whatever you believe, you just want the truth, right? So you can make up your own opinions. And I think when it comes to food and beverage, if you turn around a can and you don't know what the ingredients are, and you don't really know what you're drinking, and the marketing is telling you it's going to make you happy, you know, keep you awake all night, etc., there's definitely a mismatch. And I think, you know, we wanted to create a drink that just told it as it is. It was just flavored sparkling water. We're not going to promise to like keep you awake all night, make you run faster. It's just what it is. It's refreshment. It's water. And we came up with this idea around the ugly truth, and like being a brand that, there's a George Orwell quote, which was, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And so that book, I think 1984, was just on fire at the time, right? I think it was the number one selling book in both the UK and the US around the time when we came up with the brand. And so we just decided that the ultimate revolution at the time was to tell the truth and tell it as it is. And so the brand became ugly around that. And then we have this like street art style, which is inspired by people like Banksy, who like use subversion as a powerful technique, you know, where you have street art that says quite serious messages, but often uses cartoon and other ways to land the message that, say, my photo on the can wouldn't do, because, you know, people aren't going to take me seriously in the same way. It's, you know, there's a lot more subversion you can do with cartoon and illustration, I think, than sometimes a human voice could do. So we wanted it to be bigger than the founders, and so you don't see my face on the website, you don't see my signature on the can or anything like that. And yeah, just became.
Do you think that's a trap that a lot of founders fall into? Is they rely on the founder face or the entrepreneur?
I think it's a case by case. I actually think it works really well for some companies and works really well for some brands. But at the time, we wanted ugly to stand more for, you know, what Joe and I stood for. And very early on, we had like a founding team of employees that became the company, really. And so we always wanted to move away from it being about us and something we wanted to transcend us in the future and last a long time. So hopefully the mission stays true. And, you know, there's a lot of movement away from soda and diet soda already. And we just felt that our generation wanted a brand and brands that just told it as it is. And so Ugly's visually
so
very
talking
different
about your guys' core mission specifically, obviously it's about accessibility. It's about really this next generation of beverage that's eliminating a lot of the crap and bringing through the best ingredients for the best price. You know, do you guys have like, I mean, did I pretty much sum up the majority of that mission, or is there even more? Like, what's your ideal, like, dream scenario if you could really manifest what you believe Ugly drinks could become?
I mean, we give back too, right? So we give back money from every can sold. We felt that was an important part of it. You know, we've donated tens of thousands of dollars now to Girl Up, and we will donate this in the next year or so, tens of thousands of dollars to the ocean partners as well, if not more than that. And so it was really about standing for more than just being a drink. But at its core, Ugly is a way of making water fun. It is designed for mainstream consumers, not just in the UK, not just in the US, but we're thinking beyond both of those markets in the long run. How can you stop someone drinking 30 grams of sugar in 20 seconds and give them something that's equally refreshing without the bad stuff, but that speaks to them and speaks to people in an authentic, transparent way without any pretense? And that, you know, that is really how we felt we could impact millions of consumers who are drinking, you know, billions of gallons of soda. And so awesome. That's really where it came from, is really democratizing sparkling water for more people than previous.
Especially when you think about sparkling water. I mean, yes, you've had LaCroix, but you've also had the opposite end of the spectrum. You've had the Perriers, you've had some of these other brands that have really, I don't know, created, yes, it's a very premium category, but there's never been this perception of democratized sparkling water, minus the LaCroix of the world, that I think has, like, it just feels outdated. It feels like it was built a few generations ago, or, you know, decades ago, which it probably was. I don't know that much about LaCroix, but all right. Anyway,
you're right.
That being said, so, you know, you guys built a foundation in the UK initially, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Or it wasn't launched simultaneously in the UK and the US. You built the foundation in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, we were, you know, like starting on a shoestring. Basically, Joe and I funding it for the first like 6 months before we launched. Then we got a few of our like random family and friends to throw us a few quid, and we launched into Selfridges, which is the big department store in London.
So let's talk about that. That's an amazing store and a huge win. Like, we have our first huge wins that we think about. How did you guys break into Selfridges with such an early, unproven concept?
So Selfridges is great because they really want new things in store and new things for people to discover. And they will even take product from people walking in and just delivering it. So like, delivery could be just me rocking up with a few jars of jam, right? Like, you can rock up and do that as long as it passes a few of their like health and safety tests. And
interesting.
So at the time, it was like a great place to showcase, and the food hall there. Again, I've not been for a while now, but at the time there, the food hall was just a fascinating place. And we actually were doing a demo in there in our second week of the business and met one of our lead investors now whilst we were in there. So it's like a great place. And we did 3 weeks of back-to-back demos. We were in there every day launching it. because we wanted to build a great rate of sale story that we could then take to other retailers. And so we were outselling every other soft drink in the store by like 5x, obviously, because we had every friend and family in the whole city coming. We were like,
which people don't realize how, by the way, myself and my co-founder, David, we got in the Air One. We were in there as many demos as we could get. Bristol Farms, as many demos. Whole Foods SoPac, as many demos as we could get in the beginning. Because you have to.
I bet you're the same, right? There's people you've met doing that you still follow on Instagram, or you hear from, or like still like the pictures.
Or they're like, man, I remember 5 years ago, I had the first can of Ugly Water, or I tried the first Dream Pop, and it's powerful. I think people like, don't you agree? Think about the hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people you've met, told the ugly drink story to, tried the product, handed them the product. That is so powerful. That's so much more powerful than a digital ad or like an impression on Instagram or Facebook. I don't know. People,
you're so right, and the learning as well. You just watch people try it. You get that live feedback. You see how it looks on shelf, and you can try and over perfect your launch and try and perfect and sit around going, how's it going to look? But the second it's on shelf, you want to change one thing about it at least, right? And that is like the only thing that is considering new on shelf, right? I lost.
I was paused. My bad. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I heard you though. I heard you though.
No, it's all good. So yeah, we did that, and we got really good rate of sale story, and then we took that to Whole Foods in London. And in the UK, Whole Foods was only 9 stores at the time, so it's not like the giant it is in the US. And we got into Whole Foods, and then we did the same in Whole Foods. So demos, pretty much between like 3 or 4 of us did like 500 demos in a year in Whole Foods in the UK.
Amazing.
Got an amazing.
And you're just in there with your co-founder and whoever you could get off, interns, whatever. Boom, boom, boom.
Saturday,
sampling,
Sunday,
demoing.
Yeah, stand there, different times of day. There's nothing like, hey, look, it's ice cold. It's less than £1, or like $1, right? And it's in the fridge, and you're stood in line, and it's warm outside, and I'm gonna sell you like with 100% passion. And we used to sell like hundreds of cans a day, right? Like insane rate of sale. And obviously, you then get on the radar, and I think that's when we met different investors, different retailers. And we landed some of our first big supermarket customers in the UK through that as well. So you kind of go, layer by layer of the onion.
Yep. And by the way, we shared a lot of similar things, right? You have a few select retailers where you have great velocities, you're optimizing the shelf, you're showing some white space, and you have great data. And you take that data, and then boom. So you guys, how many stores did you build up to in the UK before you're like, all right, we're going to go try the US? And how did that even progress?
Yeah, so we were direct to consumer from day one too, and so this is like 4 years ago now, right? So we were shipping nationwide in the UK from day one, just out of gut instinct from me that was going to be a big thing, really. So we were building up that newsletter list and like running ads, all of that stuff from day one. So what was great about that is like, obviously when you're building it in London, you get in those stores in London, but we had people across the country spotting it on Instagram and then buying cases. So we had people, the north of Scotland, in the south in Cornwall, people are like, oh, I'm diabetic, I've been looking for a drink for ages, or I've been looking for something like this, I heard about this. And it just gave us such a great footprint that when we went to bigger retailers, we could be like, hey, look, we're not just a London brand, we've got fans all over the country. And I think that helped them realize that this was a bigger trend. So we ended up, probably before we started looking at the US, being in about 2,500, 3,000 stores in the UK. And then we started looking at this market, which is crazy for a startup of our size at that time, right? We were still a team of 4. And there's not many UK brands that go, okay, we're going to do America now. And so
that's crazy. I mean, that's really crazy to 4 people, and you're going to go launch into a new country. You would not recommend it.
No, not if you have a nice life and would want to lose all your hair. No, but we did it, and we've done it, and got all the battle scars and made lots of mistakes. That's the ugly truth, literally. Like, there's many mistakes along the way, like being first-time founders, young team as well, just figuring it out. We've learned a lot, but it's made us strong through it too. The same way COVID will make us all strong. All these brands that are living through it now.
Would you be willing to share some of that ugly truth, like with moving to the US, some of the biggest obstacles or challenges? Because here's the thing: is like I'm going through it as we speak with our company. We're launching into Canada, and holy crap, the amount of, I mean, first off, you got French Canadian packaging, you have the issues with customs and making sure you have the right brokers internationally. But I mean, you probably have so many great war stories of bringing a product from the UK to the US.
I mean, firstly, the time zone's insane, right? So like applying for a visa in itself in the modern day and age is really challenging. So for the first 6 months of the business, we were running it from the UK. So everything, that's a 5-hour time difference. And so you end up working till like 10 p.m. at night, like every night. And still running the UK too, right? So you're just having much longer days. And the physical demands of that, like you cannot underestimate how hard that is to continue for like months and months at a time.
Totally.
So eventually got the visa and moved over. Our very first production run, you know, we were in the UK. We flew Sophie, our operations director, over. They had a fault with the canning line. So like every single can ended up leaking. We had to like refill and delay our launch like 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
A manufacturing fault, which they fixed, to be fair. It didn't cost us anything, luckily, but cost us time.
Yeah.
Which is always burning, right, as a startup. And, you know, and then we launched a direct-to-consumer business in America. And in the UK, we were running it fine. We had out of boxes, no damages. And we were like, well, we have no damages in the UK. Let's use there's a lot of difference in the shipping stuff with FedEx. You still hear me, David?
Keep going.
You lost me.
Yep.
No, obviously, like a lot of differences shipping like across the whole of the US to shipping across the UK, and we were seeing like a huge damage rate on cans exploding in FedEx, etc. So you know, we went from having like a UK direct-to-consumer business with like very little customer service to do, to like a US customer service with like thousands of people being like, "Hey, my can's exploded," and we obviously had to fix that whilst we were doing it. So. Change the box. Yeah, it was crazy.
With sparkling water and shipping, did you oftentimes have cans exploding, or is it every so often?
Now we're like we've learned a lot. We still have the odd one, but now we're like very low damage rates now. It's still not easy to ship liquids around the US, obviously, but you know, at the time, I'm just being honest because you know there's nothing like the real story. But
no, of course,
it was a nightmare because you have all these boxes going out and. Then you're sending replacements, and it's just not an ideal customer experience. So we very quickly had to be like, okay, let's fix the box, let's fix the process. And luckily, a lot of great people helped us fix that, which was helpful. And you know, the case and consistency between the UK and US, the people in food and drink are amazing. Like the brand owners, the supporting network. Like you rarely meet someone who's not helpful, and certainly other founders who've been there and done it. In this country, same in the UK, to be fair. Everyone wants to help someone else up the ladder. So like we wouldn't have progressed through those problems without help from many people. So that's been great. And I think, yeah, just from there, it's been a case of learning, test and learning. We're still nowhere near where we want to be. So we just take it bit by bit, learn, tweak things, change the packaging, change the formula, change the pack format, you know, bring new people into the team with fresh ideas, and yeah, just continue to evolve it that way. And in many ways, I feel like it's day one today, if that makes sense. Like I'm sure.
What were the key strategic? Like you guys launched into the US in 2018 or 19?
Yeah, mid 2018. Yeah, so we're about a year and a half in. Well, 2 years in almost at this point now.
And where were you guys initially launched? Because I know you moved to New York, and you know where were you guys usually like initially pushing the product in the US?
Yeah, so we were direct to consumer everywhere, and then we were focused particularly on New York and making that retail model work. And then since then we've expanded and we're testing different markets. We want to test whether Ugly can work outside the traditional natural markets. So, you know, Tennessee's been a focus market for us, Arizona, and we're looking at, you know, adding a bunch more at the moment. Obviously this year's been disrupted for everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
And region by region now it's folding out differently. So we're just working through that. But the big thing for us was how can you prove we can work in places that, you know, aren't traditionally the beaten path for a beverage.
So rather than just going New York, SoCal, like you know, some of the big you know, Rocky Mountains, Southwest, you guys are focusing more on retail kind of hot spots that are maybe like tier 2 that could allow you to like own the market.
Yeah, how can Ugly work in a market which is typically dominated by soda? Can we convince soda consumers to switch to seltzer? And so that's been a really interesting test, and we've seen some great results. And then, you know, we'll be expanding that. We'll still do those traditional markets that we wanted to test and learn. And we've learned a lot. And there's a lot of opportunity out there for brands maybe in spaces and channels and markets that aren't traditionally the beaten path for natural food and beverage brands. And maybe it just comes from our like bullish desire and passion to like really make like something for the mainstream and that's affordable and accessible, rather than any sort of genius strategy. We were passionate about seeing whether it can work in some of these markets and whether there are soda consumers there that we can help win over.
I also think, and this is oftentimes overlooked, but like usually you can look at the founders and you can say, are these people that are literally going to die for this brand and just persevere and persist through? And I mean, when I initially, I follow your content. I met you a number of times. You know, those people that are going to go do 100 demos, that are going to cold email, show up on your doorstep and get the deal done. And so I have no doubt that you guys are going to continue making that happen. You're already doing it.
It's you can't stop, right? You just have to keep going.
Wouldn't you say, yes, it's incredibly challenging, and this is by far the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but it's weird. It doesn't necessarily feel like you're working. That's the one beauty of really, I don't know, of this. Yeah, I know exactly. Other times it's a disaster. But yeah. Like what gets you through? I mean, dude, when you give advice to other founders, beverage is, honestly, I think beverage is actually harder than food or where I'm in frozen. It's so competitive. You have crazy velocities, the capital requirements alone to scale a beverage brand. What advice would you have for anyone trying to jump into beverage as a CPG founder right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And again, there's many people brighter than me who give you better advice. But I certainly would consider how you can use e-commerce to launch a brand and learn quickly. I think having direct consumer for us has been so beneficial in terms of building community and learning. Are
you guys on Amazon or?
Yeah, we're just building Amazon now. We've really focused on building our direct consumer base first. So, like we have, tens of thousands of people on our, like previous customers in both markets now, which
great.
We just started launching limited edition flavors and testing and getting live feedback. And it's just so interesting. And I think that's a really valid strategy. But in order to make that work, you have to really understand your unit economics. And I think understanding the unit economics in beverage is probably the most important lesson anyone can learn, is the margin models, logistics.
Especially in both, I mean, in multiple currencies. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, multiple currencies, multiple channels, online, offline, multiple markets. Understanding where your costs of goods are now, where they can be in the future. I really think that's important. And maybe something when you're like drawing it up, like making a beverage in your kitchen, you don't necessarily think through. And I think really understanding, is someone going to pay $10 for this or $5 for this? Or, how many of these do I need to sell at that price to make any money? I think that in beverage, like the different categories and the different price points impact it so much from my point of view. I'm sure that's the same in food as well. But I'd say that's massively important. And as a first-time founder, probably was a bit carried away with the finished product and the actual economics very early on. So I'd say that's big advice. I'd also say online too, I just mentioned, I think it's massive. And I think real opportunity there to learn. It's not necessarily going to be the total business. I think people are going to be thirsty and therefore want to buy drinks when they're thirsty. So you need to still consider omni-channel. But I do think online for us has delivered a lot of learning that would have taken a lot longer to learn in retail. In terms
how about lifetime value? Like not just customer acquisition and CAC, like not just lifetime value online, but let's talk about like from a marketing perspective. You're getting people that are literally all over the country. They don't need to go to their respective retailer to buy an ugly product, and they learn about it. They become hooked on it, and then when it shows up in their grocery store, boom. Okay, you're going to convert them instantly.
And it's, you're able to track by location. So if we launch in a retailer in a certain region, drop an email out saying you're now available there. And I think we're agnostic in terms of where people buy from us. If somebody wants to pick up some cases in Kroger, or wants to pick up a few cases online to direct to their door, totally fine with us. I think with beverage, we want to be available when you're thirsty, when the best time is. And so very cognizant of building that out. And I think the other thing with beverage is like, you have to be prepared to probably put in a decade of really hard, thankless work. And
10 to 15 years, man. It's in CPG, and everyone thinks it's so annoying because there's such an influx of capital. Everyone thinks, oh, I'll come in here 2 to 3 years, turn it around. get a huge exit or a sale for 100 million, 300, 500 million dollars. It's such a fallacy. This is such a grind. And
It's a grind.
statistically, the opportunity to exit is so close to impossible.
Yeah, it's
you gotta love what you do.
Basically, you have to be mad enough to decide to do something close to impossible for a decade without any thanks. And
Right.
I've not, no vacations, I'm like living away from home, so
Yep.
maybe I'm mad. Maybe you have to be mad to do it, but I do think you have to be prepared to like put in an insane amount of hard work.
But what pushes you through? Like, what gets you, like, how in those really dark moments, we all have them, what do you do to kind of persevere through that?
I mean, there's so many. The thing for me, I think ultimately is that I just see this as like a voyage I'm on personally, like this is just a great brand is a story that doesn't stop unfolding. And like, for me, I love the metaphor of like being someone like sailing a ship and like, where are we going next? Where's the adventure taking us? Like, and I think when it gets really hard, it's just like, one day you're just going to look back and laugh about this. Like, it's insane. And I think you just have to have a bit of that, able to step away and look at it and just be like, in the future, the problems you have today, they just fade away, they melt away. And all these problems I'm telling you about now, I can have a laugh about, but at the time they're incredibly stressful. And I think you just have to have that mentality that like, it's on Headspace, right? The meditation app, they always say like, there's always blue sky above the clouds, right?
Yes.
And I think that mentality is so important in startups because you're probably going to have a problem, 2 or 3 problems to face every single day.
Was there ever a point where in the early days you were building this and you got like, I mean, obviously, dude, you're working at an incredible company at Vita Coco. You're at Kraft Heinz. You're in corporate America, corporate Great Britain.
Pretty much, same thing, yeah.
Effectively, you got friends, you got opinions, you got people criticizing you. How do you deal with that noise? Because I think that's some of the biggest challenges in the first 12 to 24 months where you're trying to figure out proof of concept is everyone has an opinion with social media. How are you breaking through that noise and just saying, fuck it, I'm going to bet on myself here and we're going to make this happen?
Yeah, I think, Joe, my co-founder, and myself always had a very strong vision, and we have a vision for the future of the world, right, that we really believe in. And there's a Japanese concept called Ikigai, which is like, I think it's like a 4-circle Venn diagram, and it's like what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can get paid doing, and then something else. I can't remember what.
Yeah.
Something else. And it's Ikigai is the Japanese word for what gets you out of bed in the morning. And I think Joe and I were very conscious of like, doing something we knew how to do, what the world needed, we felt, something we loved to do. And I can't remember what the last one is. You have to look it up.
I'm going to now look it up.
What you're good at as well, probably. What you're good at.
Right.
Like, can you actually do it? And I think that's quite important to really know that like whatever comes our way, whatever people say, we're kind of unwavering in that like mission and like what we set out to do. And all those hard days, there's so many. I mean, last few months just been brutal. I'm sure
with COVID, has that, because now I'm assuming, how are you guys reacting to the climate? I mean, it's been interesting for us with Frozen, but I'd be curious with beverage.
Yeah, it depends, right? Like we have different markets, different states, different cities. You have whole of the UK, London, New York, Tennessee, Arizona, California. I mean, and then direct to consumer everywhere. So direct to consumers boomed. Amazon's doing really well. Some retailers have done really well. Some markets have done well, but then others have gone the other way because, in London, all the offices, restaurants, cafes, bars are still. Wait, I think I lost you for a second.
No, you got it. You got it.
Yes. So, it's just it's been an interesting time, and we've had to be very close to our forecast, very close to operations. Some parts of the business have seen like 500% growth, others are flat or zero.
Yep.
And really, first time it's hard because as usually as an entrepreneur, there's something you can do, right? And in some channels, we've just had to accept that they're closed, right? They're not opening for a while. So
Totally.
what are you going to do about it? And luckily, have a team that's very robust and resilient from all the experience we've had before. And I think we all appreciate that like this stuff's just going to make us stronger. And I think any startup that rides out this year is just going to end up so strong in the long run, right? Or anyone who starts through this as well.
I think the next 6 months is really this opportunity. It's going to be so challenging, but there's going to be obviously a lot of losers and people who will, go out of business. But I do think at the end of that there's going to be this, the most resilient brands are really going to win and win bigger.
And people too, and I think, you can see it in the way restaurants and bars are innovating right now. Brands are doing the same. Like, it's going to be a fascinating period to see what everyone learns through this experience. And I think people maybe won't take things for granted as much too. I think there's definitely, in terms of what we do, there's a huge appreciation right now for the grocery system in the US and in the UK, right? With shelves were stocked with all sorts of products. And there weren't really that, there were outages for a little bit, but not really. Like the system held up pretty resiliently, and
it did. It was surprising actually how well how like the Krogers of the world, the Whole Foods,
amazing,
the Walmarts,
really,
how well they performed.
To feed everyone, to keep everybody stocked, the way the staff worked in stores. I just think I'd hope there's a newfound respect for like everybody involved and a bit more appreciation of the hard work everybody puts in to get food on the table or beverages or whatever it is. So I'm very bullish on it, and I do think one thing we've noticed, and I don't know about you, is like health feels like a macro trend through this, and I do feel maybe for the first 4 weeks people were eating a few more bags of Doritos and some ice cream and trying to get through it. But I do think as that passes and you like life, being isolated and sitting on the sofa for 6 weeks and eating Doritos isn't necessarily the best lifestyle. I do. No,
and it's funny how many people were writing articles about how all of these consumers are flocking to big food co's and, back to the Oreos and the Cheetos of the world. I think that was a quick hit. Or just a peak. Like, you're going to have a very small window where that's the truth. And then people are going to be like, and even with coronavirus cases starting to rebound, people are still working out from home. Look at the Peloton sales. Look at, the Mirror model or Tonal. People are still investing in their health because there's not a lot else to do with your time. So your trip to the grocery store is actually going to be centered around product discovery. Same with D2C, healthier products that you can enjoy. So I don't want to, I know that, dude, you're incredibly busy, and I want to wrap this up and definitely be cognizant of your time. There's one thing that I really like to talk about with founders, because this is really tricky, especially with the timing, is talking about, as we said before, CPG brands require so much capital. So the idea between bootstrapping and raising money, for us, in the beginning, we raised as little as possible, but really did put a lot of our own money in. Can you talk a little bit about your process of scaling this business and thinking about how to select and curate the right group of investors, how to bootstrap versus when to raise, just high level?
No, it's a really good question. We're similar to you, I think. We bootstrapped for a while. Then, bootstrapping, I consider family and friends. We weren't raising a lot of money from family and friends, tens of thousands of pounds, right? So nothing really. Right. We kept that going for a long time, and I think for me, every layer of funding you go for you've got to show another layer of risk removed from the onion, so to speak. So every time you're going to raise money, you need to show somebody that it's less risky than it was before, and basically prove out every time that you're heading in the right direction. There's a really good Lines and Dots article by Mark Suster that I always think about, where he's like, I saw that. I love that. Every time. They need to be tracking up. So you need to think about what you're showing externally.
So good, that article.
So I'd never raised money before, never met an investor before, never done a pitch before. I'd watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, right? In the UK, it's what it's called. And, you think you know what it's like. It's totally different to that. And I think what we've learned, and I don't know what your experience is, but I generally think if you keep plugging away, you have to talk to a lot of people sometimes, and sometimes it's not as easy. But I generally think you end up with the right match. You end up with people who are kindred spirits. You end up with people who are on your journey. And we found that by really plugging away and really, talking to as many people as possible and not being desperate and really thinking it through. We've ended up with some really good partners who think about Ugly the same way we do and think about in the long run. One of our investors said they want to invest in businesses that they wouldn't mind getting into trouble with the founders. They don't mind. And I always thought that was quite a nice way of looking at it, right? It's it's very easy to think about what the good times look like, but when it's tough and when, things are difficult, do you want to ride through those hard times with those founders? And I think we've always looked for people who feel like that, or at least we get on with like that. And so when there have been challenges, it's you know, in it together vibe, rather than like, why aren't you guys doing this or that? And yeah, I just, you know, like, it's the same values you have in life, right? Be nice to people, be honest, be yourself, be transparent. And I do think you end up meeting the right types of investors for what you're doing. But yeah, obviously.
I also think there's a huge challenge, right? Because you've got VC investors that have flooded into the space who have never invested in CPG and food and beverage, but have seen such great returns from previous decades of founders or products, or just in the natural food industry. And so the one thing that I constantly love chatting with founders about is there's this pressure to bring in big VC money. And if you're lucky enough to do that, then it's, you know, I've seen businesses like, you know, effectively file for bankruptcy because they're chasing revenue metrics and making really aggressive growth decisions for that top line growth without actually proving product market fit, without perfecting the product. And so, you know,
and it's a really delicate balance, right? And you have to really think it through, and you know, things change as well, right? The world changes, and then you have to navigate. Easy to plan for your business to be like all green lights, right? But it's, you know, it's very rarely the case, and so you need to really think through your plan, what you're promising, and really focus in on that. But I agree, it's you know, I think the environment's changing too. I think what investors are looking for is changing as well. I think there's more focus on long-term profitability, really sensible unit economics, and yeah, we're still really thinking that through, exactly the right balance in terms of growth and achieving those things. So I'm sure you're the same, right? It's a delicate balance sometimes when you're trying to grow and get to more people and tell more people about what you're doing. So we're still learning. I'm still learning that process too. But yeah, I think by being passionate about what you're doing and have a story that every time you go to a different level of investor de-risks it, and then just being persistent, right? Like, sometimes you'll meet the investor who's going to invest like on the first call, right? Then another time it might take you 20 calls to find that right person. But usually we found that if we stay consistent and keep believing, there's always someone great out there that we might not have been introduced to or might not have met yet. And you never know when that intro could come.
You're one email, coffee, meeting, phone call away from your next big break. I love that.
You have to be someone who's going to take that next coffee, right? Otherwise, you'll never know. So
John Paul DeJoria talks about that all the time. Yeah, I love it. He was a big door-to-door salesman. Amazing, man. We'll do it. Hugh, you are awesome. Thank you so much. Congrats on everything. Anything else that, you know, everyone watching can keep an eye out for with regards to future products, innovation coming from the Ugly portfolio?
No, we have a ton of interesting stuff. If you follow Ugly Drinks, where am I? Putting it up here or whatever. You can follow us, Ugly Drinks. If you sign up to our newsletter, we launch our latest limited edition flavors secretly to our email mailing list a week before everyone else finds out about it. They've been selling out pretty quick. The next one's amazing. I can't tell you what it is, but I don't think there's ever been this flavor of seltzer ever made before. So if you want to try it, sign up. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm Ugly Hugh on Instagram. You can DM me. I'll help in any way I ever can with anybody. If I can, if I can't, probably better to talk to David. So DM him on LinkedIn.
Guys, by the way, it's true. I DM'd him and he responded. That's how we first started chatting.
Right?
So, dude, Hugh, you're the man. Congrats on everything, buddy. Thank you guys for your time.
Take care. Bye.
Later, buddy.